I was sent this video a couple days ago. I don't recall who sent it to me. Someone in chat, who told me that they had shown it to their family and it had turned their Trump-loving parents into Biden supporters. So I haven't watched this video before, and I figured we'd watch it together. Okay? It's called Anti-Politics and the Nanny State. It's a Carlos Maza thing. I'm not a big Carlos Maza fan, but you know what? Let's take a look at it, right? Like if it transitions someone from Trump to Biden, let's take a look at it with an open mind, you know. So to that end, by the way, I'm a Republican from Florida, but I'm hoping Biden wins, and in 2025, hoping a better Republican will run. CX debts. I 100% all the respect in the world to you, friend. Like my dad is a conservative Republican. He cannot vote for Trump. He didn't vote for Trump in 2016, and he voted for Biden in 2020. So like, I think there are a number of people in the same boat. But you know what? I appreciate you being here, and I hope that maybe I can win you over. Win you over to the socialist side while you're here. But with that being said, let's take a look at this video. Let's see the case Carlos Maza presents. Okay.
Freedom. Is there anything more American than freedom? That divine right to go where you want, do what you want, buy what you want, and live your life like a wild Mustang or bald eagle. Some other animal that doesn't know it's being used as a metaphor. That freedom is what makes us who we are. It's what makes America, America. But that freedom is under attack. Not by terrorists or the French, but by the radical left. Nanny State leeches. Government lapdogs who think the answer to every problem is more government. The left wants to tie me, wants to tie us down with rules and regulations. Take away our cars, our healthcare, and even our right to make an honest living. Why? So that they can control us. Make us dependent on Big Brother's teeth. These power-hungry communists.
I need to let you guys know that if you didn't watch the panel I was on last night, this was the literal argument people made against Joe Biden. They were saying that Joe Biden wants to is the real fascist for for wanting people to wear masks during a airborne pandemic. Like, I need to extract myself from that conversation, wipe it from my mind. Anyway, while this is a joke, I need to point out that it's not hyperbole. There are people who literally think these things, okay? And the people who think these things, there are a lot of them. It's more about how he wants to shut things down again. Yeah, again, he wants to shut down things again so that our hospitals aren't overwhelmed by a third World War I's worth of people dying. Like, you guys realize we lost like 114,000 people in World War I. We've lost double that now, and it's not the end of the year yet, and World War I didn't take place over the course of a year. Like, you guys really want to live in a world where we're losing like 3 or 4 World War I's worth of people every year from this COVID thing? Nah, come on, we got to do something about it. It's not like people in World War I just threw up their hands. Oh, nothing we can do about it. Better just carry on. Nah.
Want to turn America into Russia or China or some other country that doesn't know it's being used as a metaphor. Look, the point is, I think it's time we take America back. Tell the nanny state to stuff it. Reclaim the freedom, nay, the power that rightfully belongs to me. It belongs to us, the American people, the cowboys, and most importantly, your friends at GE, BP, Monsanto, and Chase Bank. Charles, get the hell out of my shot. Shit. I'll see you around, partner.
Okay, I don't know anything. I don't know much about Carlos Maza other than like he got there was like some drama between him and Steven Crowder. I do have to admit he's charming as hell. Okay, I like him very much so far.
Is that a fedora? Jesus Christ. This is a video about power.
Free housing, free higher education, free, everything's free. A magical socialist utopia.
And the greatest con in American politics.
If this radical agenda is ever implemented, your friends and your freedoms, friends, guess what? The friends that love freedom, it's going to be stripped away.
When you think about it, America is kind of the perfect target. We are a country of people trained from day one to worry about government tyranny.
The B-Mans, I just have to tell you, like, literally in Wisconsin, as Trump was talking about rounding the corner on COVID-19, they had to build a temporary field hospital to house all of the people who were getting sick from COVID-19. So, like, the idea that we're doing fine, it depends largely on where you're living, because right now, like, rural states are getting more overwhelmed. And for example, one of the users in our chat yesterday sent me data that their 1,101 bed hospital completely booked up. They have no space left because they have so many COVID-19 patients. And also, like, I work in the hospital, like with hospitals for like my job, so like I can tell you, it's really, really bad, like really catastrophically bad. Look, it depends on where the hospitalizations are happening. Like, you can't just ship someone 2 states over to a free hospital bed, you know? Yeah, Revolt Rise lives in Texas. He just provided you a handy link there where they're also struggling with COVID. It really depends where you're living, my dude. And we have like 8 million cases of COVID-19 in the United States. We got literally 100,000 new cases over the past week in the United States. And we're, by the way, epidemiologists say that what we know now is that we're drastically underestimating how many people actually have COVID-19 in the United States. So, like, yeah, it's it's really bad. Like, really, really bad, my dude. Your data might seem fine, but 500,000 hospitalizations is not something that our hospital system can easily internalize on top of like normal hospital operations. And that's the entire point of lockdowns, is preventing hospitals from getting overwhelmed, because if hospitals get overwhelmed, a lot of other people start dying too. Anyway, well, my dude, I all I know is that I work in the hospital industry in the Midwest, and hospitals here are getting fucked. So like, I don't know what to tell you other than either your data's wrong, and I don't know. You can send, by the way, you can send your data to one of my mods. I'm happy to look at it. But the idea that the hospitals are getting overwhelmed is a myth is not true. Like, hospitals in certain areas are 100% getting overwhelmed. Like, you don't have to build temporary hospitals to treat people if things are going well. My mother passed away from COVID on June 26th. Dang, CX debts. I'm really sorry to hear that, my dude. I've had several friends get it. One of my friends lost his father, so I'm really sorry to hear about your loss. Yeah, I think any rational human being, knowing Trump's record on how he's handled this pandemic, should vote against him for this upcoming election. The really unfortunate thing is that now treatment is pretty good and the chances of survival with hospital care has gone up a bunch. But that often still requires long hospital stays, and it's likely that soon some people won't be able to receive that care. Yeah, and Enderil from Narsil, A, I love your username. Big Tolkien fan here. And B, I agree with you. However, while our care has increased in quality, a lot of people are still getting permanently scarred from COVID. Like, you can get scarring on your lungs. You can get like heart scarring. It can get in your brain and cause brain damage. There's all kinds of awful complications, and the complications get worse if you're younger. So if you're younger and you get it, like it's true that young people tend not to have as bad of reactions to this. But when they do have bad reactions, it tends to be worse. Yeah, the B-Mans, send it to a mod, and I can take a look at it. I'm sure some are getting overwhelmed. They are meant to operate at like 90 to 95% capacity, so when people freak out over something and want to get checked out, they get overwhelmed fast. Yeah.
Our origin story is literally, we fled the tyrants who told us what to do, then we killed the tyrants who told us what to do. Now, nobody tells us what to do. Our mascot is the cowboy, a tough, self-reliant badass who's not afraid to straight up murder a cop if he steps out of line. Cowboys are Antifa, pass it on. Our national identity is built around a kind of constant anxiety about government overreach. We are a free people, always ready to water the tree of liberty with the blood of tyrants. And look, I'm a fan. A little anarchy is good for a country. Quite frankly, after the summer we just had, I'm about ready to water the tree of liberty my damn self. Ow! But over the past 50 years, that legitimate anxiety about government overreach has transformed into a kind of knee-jerk hatred of all things government. The prime example of this is Ronald Reagan, who used to dress up in goofy-ass cowboy hats and say shit like,
"Government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem."
But even Democrats have bought into it.
The era of big government is over.
From climate change to healthcare to our response to a global pandemic, American politics have become defined by this belief that government is the enemy.
I don't care if you're a Republican, I don't care if you're a Democrat, big government is the enemy and big government sucks.
All right, well,
And at the heart of that transformation is this new, kind of radical libertarian idea, which is that democracy is essentially a war between the individual and the state. The individual wants freedom to live a decent life and make their own choices, while the government wants control, to run your life, limit your choices, and become as powerful as possible. That war is a zero-sum game. The more power the government has, the less power and freedom the individual has. Or, as Grandpa Snake Oil likes to put it,
the bigger the government, the smaller the citizen.
Noam Chomsky calls this government is the enemy idea anti-politics, because it's not a rejection of specific policies, it's a rejection of the whole idea of government power. And I know what you're thinking. Noam Chomsky again? Haven't you read any other authors? No, okay? I went to a liberal arts college. I learned 3 things. Noam Chomsky, Ani DeFranco, and how not to dissociate while bottoming. And one of those I barely learned. According to anti-politics, even nice-sounding government programs like Medicare for All, the Green New Deal, or unemployment benefits during a global pandemic are actually just traps. Bait. Designed to get you to give up your freedom and become dependent on the nanny state.
This isn't about jobs. This is about control and viewing government as a do-gooder. And the more government control that the government has in the system, the happier they are.
This idea is so mainstream now that it kind of feels like it's always been there. Some of you may even buy into it yourselves. But this is a pretty recent development. Americans used to really trust the government. It's only in the past half century or so that they've lost faith. So, what happened? How did Americans become so convinced to turn on the one institution that's supposed to represent them? I mean, don't worry, I'm about to show you. I just gotta...
Hurry, step right up, folks. Here's the answer to your problems. Dr. Utopia's sensational new discovery, ism.
This is a clip from the 1949 propaganda film, Make Mine Freedom. One of the best and earliest examples of American anti-politics.
Government control, no worry about votes. Name your own salary.
The film depicts the government as a power-hungry con artist who tries to lure Americans into trading away their freedom in exchange for government handouts.
I hereby turn over to ISM Incorporated everything I have, including my freedom, in return for which said ISM promises to take care of me forever.
Sign away my freedom. Why, this is ridiculous. Don't be corny, brother.
Thanks to this old man, the con artist is eventually exposed as a freedom-hating tyrant, trying to trap Americans in a life of government servitude.
Before signing up, you boys ought to try a little taste of Dr. Ism's formula.
You can't do this to me! I'll strike!
The state forbids strikes. No more private property. No more you. The state will do your planning from now on.
We must fight to regain our freedom.
Everything is fine. Everything is fine. Everything is fine.
And the film ends with a triumphant call to say no to big government and yes to American capitalism.
When anybody preaches disunity through class warfare, you know that person seeks to rob us of our freedom and destroy our very lives.
In a lot of ways, Make Mine Freedom looks like a typical Cold War propaganda film. But it wasn't created by the government. It was commissioned by Alfred P. Sloan, the head of General Motors and the father of the modern corporation. See, at the time, the American labor movement was delivering like dominoes and had successfully passed the Fair Labor Standards Act, which created a minimum wage, overtime pay, and child labor rules. Like most factory owners, Sloan wasn't thrilled about that and decided to spend $600,000 creating anti-government films that would turn the public against further regulation. Or as Sloan's brother put it, to create a bombardment of the American mind with elementary economic principles. That bombardment was just the beginning of decades of anti-government propaganda funded by giant corporations. You probably recognize the Ad Council as the group behind that iconic Hillary Duff That's So Gay ad.
When you say that's so gay, do you realize what you say? Knock it off.
But the Ad Council was actually formed by a group of corporate advertising executives who were mad the government wouldn't let them lie about the food and drugs they were selling, and decided to band together to advance their corporate interests and accuse the government of turning people into pawns of the master state. As one attendee said at one of the Ad Council's earliest meetings, "We have power, why do we not use it?"
So, just after looking through your COVID data, again, it's like I said, there are different areas of the country that are affected differently by COVID hospitalizations. So, like, your numbers are total numbers, and in total numbers, it doesn't seem like it would be a problem, right? Except that COVID cases aren't uniformly spread out across the United States. And so, like, for example, in Minnesota, Daki Makura, are you ironically or unironically 1350ing in my chat? I would like to know. If so, you're welcome to come on. We can talk about it if you'd like. The issue is that, like, for example, in Minnesota, like, the average for the last 7 days is like 10% of, like, I like, yeah, let me just double check my math real quick. Yeah, like, on an average week in Minnesota, about 10,000 people go into the hospital in a normal year. In Minnesota right now, our average has doubled. So double the amount of people are needing to go into the hospital right now because of COVID. So yeah, our hospitals are getting overwhelmed here. It depends on where you are. Let's see. Also, Revolt Rise, if the that person contacts you and wants to hop into Discord with me, I'm more than happy to discuss 1350. I don't shy away from those questions. Let's see, I've had to explain this the same thing multiple times. I don't get how people confuse the idea. Let's see. Okay, I'm trying to catch up with chat here, guys. All right. Anyway, let's continue.
Producing a ton of actually incredible propaganda about the importance of the free market and the dangers of big government, including this ad warning that a scary communist named Ivan is watching you. Don't get horny, don't get horny, don't get horny, don't get horny. As the group declared in 1948, the world today is engaged in a colossal struggle to determine whether freedom or statism will dominate. God bless the closeted PR guy who wrote this. The first libertarian think tank in America was the Foundation for Economic Education, a group dedicated to spreading the economic, ethical, and legal principles of a free society. Wanna guess where it got its funding? Yup. GM, GE, Monsanto, and a whole bunch of oil companies. The group's first big project? Teaming up with the real estate lobby to create a policy paper attacking rent control laws. Fucking landlords, I swear to God. The American Enterprise Institute, another libertarian think tank that's still shitting out policy papers today, was founded by Lewis Brown, the former president of the largest American manufacturer of asbestos. The same Lewis Brown who spent decades hiding the fact that his product was killing his customers. The same Lewis Brown who, when asked if he would make his employees work with asbestos until they dropped dead on the factory floor, answered yes. We save a lot of money that way. You know.
Guys, I need to point out, by the way, that this is the exact same argument that I received yesterday when bringing up, well, do you expect people to just go out and work in a pandemic or die? And the capitalists I was talking to, the fine, upstanding people, said yes. So people are like that capitalist out there. They literally do not care if you live or die as long as you are producing wealth. And I think that that's fundamentally a bad system that we should change. And I think that that's a pretty simple idea that's fairly reasonable, right?
No, that Lewis Brown.
Looks like Vincent Price.
When you look at modern anti-politics groups, you'll notice a similar pattern. In the 90s, anti-government campaigns like Enough is Enough and Get Government Off Our Back were launched by tobacco companies who were worried about anti-smoking laws and hired political consultants like Roger Ailes to fan public fears about government regulation.
Enough taxation, enough censorship, enough regulation, enough repression.
Ailes, of course, would later go on to launch Fox News because cancer was kind of his thing. The Tea Party was covered as a populist uprising against big government, but it was orchestrated by Americans for Prosperity and Freedom Works, two groups funded by oil and tobacco companies, as well as a bunch of other giant corporations. Those same groups, by the way, were linked to the recent protest against stay-at-home orders, because time is a flat circle and these people are cockroaches who will not die. And the same is even true for our favorite free-thinking YouTubers. Daily Wire and PragerU, who were
Wait, Sluggy dude, what sounds like the genetic fallacy? Please specify.
rail endlessly against big government exist thanks to funding from the ultra-wealthy Wilkes brothers, who made their billions fracking. The Rubin Report is funded by Learn Liberty, a project of the oil billionaire Koch brothers. And Turning Point USA, that tireless critic of powerful elites, got its seed money from Foster Friess, an ultra-wealthy investment manager who likes to make public appearances wearing a cowboy hat.
I'm going to make the argument for why billionaires should exist.
Anti-politics isn't some natural evolution of American conservatism. It is a multi-billion-dollar propaganda effort, manufactured by giant corporations who would very much like the government not to regulate their shit.
Well, Sluggy dude, I would say that the genetic fallacy doesn't really apply here because we're talking about companies. Companies founding or funding things. Typically, companies are like mandated by law to do things that make them more profitable. So companies don't typically, and also companies exist for the sole purpose of making money. So like, if a company is investing in something, like, say, an advocacy group, it makes you wonder, well, it's probably because it's in their best interest, which is why Carlos Maza in this video is drawing the line from the people who are investing in a certain group or certain interlocutors, like Charlie Kirk, for example. He just pointed out a neat line there from a billionaire funding the organization that funds Charlie Kirk, and then Charlie Kirk saying, I want to make the case for billionaires. Now, do you think that Charlie Kirk would be making that case if he wasn't funded by a billionaire? I would argue maybe not. Maybe not. I think it is reasonable to question the motives of people who are presenting arguments. And if there is substantiating information behind it, well, I think that points towards like a certain motivation.
And look, on this channel, we respect a good con. This is a damn good con. Inventing an entire political ideology to
Well, no, it's not evidence that it's false, but that's not what Carlos Maza is indicating here. Carlos Maza is indicating that it is propaganda, which you have to accept that it unquestionably is, otherwise these companies wouldn't be investing obscene amounts of money into people. So that the claim isn't that what they're saying is false. The claim is saying that they are presenting this information due to a bias that they get from their employer.
Avoid taxes and regulations is like a god tier flex, but it's also kind of dramatic, isn't it? I mean, these companies could have easily spent their billions lobbying against specific laws they don't like, but instead they chose to go big, to manufacture this grand narrative about the individual versus the state. The question is, why? Why are the Koch brothers, who made their billions off of oil, backing the Tea Party, which is supposed to be about healthcare? Why do Ben Shapiro and Dennis Prager treat every government program as some communist plot to take away your freedom? Why are giant corporations so invested in convincing you that you're better off on your own? Oh shit, I have to change scenes again.
Very much like what the whole propaganda system has been trying to ram into your heads for 50 years. The government is the enemy, and private power doesn't exist. Okay? Now, it's obvious why big corporations who are fighting the everlasting battle for the minds of men would want that to be the picture you have. If the government is your enemy, then those who run the private institutions are quite well off. There's no threat of democracy. They can run things peacefully. The people are demoralized. And the normal methods of democratic participation to gain social ends are excluded. You can't do anything through the political system because it's your enemy. So therefore, let us, we who run the private system, let us run everything and don't bother us.
I never know how to enter the frame for these things. The reason giant corporations spend so much money promoting anti-politics is because they know that the alternative to government power isn't individual freedom. It's corporate control. When the Tea Party derailed a government healthcare option in 2009, it was a huge setback for the Nanny State. But now, massive insurance and pharmaceutical companies get to set the price of healthcare, which means millions of people are now forced to choose between giving up treatment or getting sucked into endless cycles of medical debt.
Some of these people will be paying $5 or $10 on their debt until the day they die.
Is that really freedom? When the Trump administration started...
The B-Mans, I have to take issue with your point here, because I think if 200,000 people started dying from lightning strikes all across the United States, it would similarly be a gigantic news story that people were getting struck by lightning and dying in absurdly high numbers. Like, it's worth freaking out about something like that.
Rolling back regulations by government agencies like the EPA and USDA, Big Brother definitely got smaller.
It's big government at its...
I do need to point out, literally Revolt Rise has had COVID and has lingering problems from COVID. Like, we literally have someone in this chat right now who has been affected by COVID in a deep and lasting way.
But now, many factory owners get to regulate themselves, so you have no idea whether your food is actually safe to eat, and no way to stop businesses from dumping in your drinking water.
As long as they feel like they can get away with it, they will.
Are you really more powerful now? And when Congress decided not to extend pandemic relief this summer, Americans were spared from being tangled in the government's web of dependency. But now, millions of Americans are dependent on their bosses and landlords, who can force them to work in unsafe conditions or risk being thrown out on the street.
It's kind of a gamble, but I kind of have a choice.
Do you really feel like a cowboy? The evil genius of anti-politics is that everything it accuses the government of, being power hungry, lying to the public, and trying to control you, is actually true of big business. But while corporate propaganda tells us that tyranny is something done by politicians and super sexy secret police, big businesses don't really need any of that to control you. If your health insurance decides to raise your premiums, if your billionaire boss tells you to work in unsafe conditions, or if a factory starts dumping toxic waste into your backyard, there's basically nothing you can do about it, no matter how much of a cowboy you are.
This by the way, this take is based as fuck. Like, my opinion of Carlos Maza coming into this was that he was a libby lib, but I have to admit, Carlos Maza is charming as heck and has some pretty cogent anti-capitalist points here. I'm digging it. I'm digging it a lot.
If power shifts over into the hands of private tyrannies, then there's no way for the public to do a thing. There's no mechanism for doing it. These are tyrannical organizations.
There's a reason that Make Mine Freedom video tries to scare you about big government by literally depicting it as a private corporation.
I hereby turn over to ISM Incorporated.
Hey Angus, I would like to say that Trump literally has way more evidence against him being a pedophile than Joe Biden does. Like, Donald Trump has literally bragged about getting to see underage girls undressing at his pageants. Like, he literally bragged about that. He's bragged about sexually assaulting women. He was friends with Jeffrey Epstein, and told the world about how they shared a love for young women. So, like, yeah, maybe saying that Joe Biden is the pedophile might be a bit of projection. Lady Starfire, thank you for the subscription. I appreciate you so very gosh darn much. Yeah, Lady Starfire is one of the OGs, by the way, guys. There are videos of Joe Biden sniffing little girls, and I grant you that that is very, very weird, but Donald Trump literally admitted to it. So, like, I don't know what the where your argument is. Are you saying your dude is a dishonest piece of shit, or are you saying that he is honest and that he's a pedophile? You can't have it both ways.
Because unlike government, corporations don't answer to the public. They are actual tyrannies, whose only real function is to extract as much value out of you as possible.
The rich are getting richer. U.S. billionaires saw their fortunes skyrocket since March.
And sure, you could vote with your wallet, drop your health insurance, quit your job, and move out of town. But where are you gonna go? Corporations have no borders, baby! And anyway, what's one angry customer? A few disgruntled employees in the face of billions of dollars and another bombardment of corporate advertising. You will be replaced. And if your only options are to run away or submit, are you actually free? Or have you just learned to really love your masters? Okay, alright. I'm sorry. In my defense, I badly need to get laid. The only thing
we all do,
that
Carlos.
stops
We all
giant
do.
corporations from becoming full-ass tyrannies is government. Big business knows that as long as the public can use the power of the state to act collectively, pool their resources, defend themselves, and create rules and regulations, it's much harder to exploit them. Anti-politics is how they make sure we don't act collectively.
The government is the one institution that people can change. That's exactly why all the anger and fear is directed against the government. The government has a defect. It's potentially democratic. Corporations have no defect. They're pure tyrannies. So therefore you want to keep corporations invisible and focus all anger on the government. If you don't like something, blame the government, not blame the guys in the Fortune 500, because you don't read the Fortune 500. You just read what they tell you in the newspapers.
Which explains why so much of anti-politics sounds exactly like anti-union propaganda. They want to control you, they're taking your hard-earned money. Anti-union laws are literally called right to work laws. Because if you can convince people that collective action is a threat to their freedom, that unions are a nightmare, and the government's your enemy, and you're better off on your own anyway, they're left with no real way to challenge corporate power. Or, to put it differently, if you can convince people that they're cowboys, they might not notice that they're actually the cows.
Boom.
Nice detective work, Inspector Fadget. You really cracked this one wide open. Inspector Fadget? I bet you feel pretty good about yourself. Exposing corporate America.
Wow.
Destroying libertarianism with facts and logic. I mean, I think I did an okay job. Nobody cares about facts and logic, you nerd. Good propaganda isn't supposed to make sense. It's supposed to make you feel like a badass. Make fun of the cowboy shtick all you want. At least it's cool. Something to aspire to. Well, I happen to think that Chomsky's argument about anti-politics is pretty cool. You just called your audience cows. You spent this entire video being a smug dickhead. This is the problem with you big government types. Your entire worldview relies on convincing people that they need to be rescued, that individuals are powerless. Well, when it comes to multinational corporations, we are kind of powerless. Unless we work together. Oh my god, you're hopeless. What? Look, there's a reason both parties have embraced anti-politics. Because Americans don't want to rely on some idiot politicians. They don't want to be stronger together, and they certainly don't want to be comrades. They want to be gods. But in democracy, there are no gods. Sounds like a tough draw.
The bigger the government,
I don't know what's happening anymore.
Okay, you know what? I mean, he's right. Part of the reason anti-politics is such a good propaganda trick is because it maps on to a lot of the stories we tell ourselves about what power is supposed to look like. The lone badass standing up against the evil empire, it's not just a cowboy thing. It's David versus Goliath. It's Katniss versus the Capitol. It's V for Vendetta, baby! It's a story that plays to our egos. Our primal desire to be the masters of our own destinies. To accept the argument I'm making about anti-politics is to accept that you aren't always going to be the master of your own destiny. That actually, we live in a society where we're often forced to choose between corporate power or public power, and that our best chance of making it out alive is to try to work together with millions of strangers that we don't know and who don't know us, through elected officials who are often incompetent and prone to corruption by giant corporations, all while trying to deal with an ever-changing list of crises and calamities. It's just not that inspiring. To quote Thomas Jefferson, "Democracy is a fucking nightmare!" So if you are looking for examples of the government being stupid or inefficient or over-aggressive, you will always find them. And if you're being paid by corporate executives to highlight those examples, you have a very lucrative career ahead of you. We just don't have that many cool stories glamorizing collective action or shared sacrifice. I mean, I guess there's Rent, but nobody likes Rent. We get it.
True,
You're
nobody
gay
likes
vegans
Rent.
who can't afford to live in the East Village anymore. You don't see me singing about it. To be honest, I don't know what to do about this. I get why, even after knowing that anti-politics is a corporate PR stunt, people would still latch onto it. Latch onto the hope that if you could just get government out of the way, you'd be in control. I don't have anything to offer that's as simple or sexy as the cowboy fantasy. But it is a fantasy. And once you're able to let it go, to accept that, for better or for worse, we're all kind of stuck with each other, being exploited by the same corporate goons. You might find yourself being energized by a very different kind of power. Not the imaginary freedom of the cowboy, but the awe-inspiring force of a shit ton of angry cattle, who are tired of being sold for profit, and would very much like a word with the ranchers.
All right, we could be done. That's not the guy who comes from a rich family. Mr. Sam, I don't know which person you're referring to. But Angus 16, if you'd like to come on and talk about socialism. Oh, can the video be louder? Yes, it can be. Sorry, I didn't see Riot Girl Callie. I didn't see your comment. My bad. But if he does show up and wants to come into a call and we can talk about socialism or whatever, I'm more than happy to. I do have to use the bathroom real quick. I'm going to run a little ad break. For those of you who are subscribed, you're going to get some dope tunes instead. Yeah, I mean, oh, okay, Carlos Maza is from a rich family. Well, you know what? In this house, we support class traders, okay? We support class traders from the wealthy, okay? Yeah.